In the heart of New Orleans, where the streets hum with the rhythm of jazz and the scent of beignet lingers in the air, there is a day that promises nothing but love. Valentine's Day, a day of flowers, chocolates, and candlelit dinners. The kind of day that draws lovers close, that whispers promises of forever. The kind of day we look forward to, thinking that love, in all its beauty, will reign supreme. But beneath the soft glow of that rosy ideal, in the very city where revelry and romance dance through the night, a chilling truth waits to emerge. In February of 2003, New Orleans was about to be shaken by an event that would forever alter the way we view the connection between love and violence. It was a crime so brutal, so heart-wrenching, that it would challenge everything we thought we knew about Valentine's Day. Amidst the sounds of live bands playing in crowded bars, amid the laughter and warmth that spilled out into the streets, a violent act unfolded, one that would leave the city reeling, and force it to grapple with the shadow that hides behind the neon-lit streets and the romantic allure of the French Quarter. For centuries, New Orleans has been a city of contrasts, a place where the past and present collide, where jazz legends and ghost stories intertwine. A city that holds its secrets close, from the dark corners of Bourbon Street to the quiet mansions on St. Charles Avenue. Its history, both rich and tragic, is etched into every crumbling brick, every wrought iron fence. And yet, for all its allure and charm, New Orleans has always carried a darkness beneath the surface. It is a city with a history of violence, a place where passion and danger are often inseparable, where love can turn as violent as it is tender. On that fateful Valentine's Day, as the city celebrated love, a different kind of passion was about to erupt. It wasn't the soft affection of sweethearts exchanging gifts. It wasn't the peaceful gesture of couples promising their undying devotion. Instead, it was the kind of love that breeds destruction, the kind that will stop at nothing to get what it wants, no matter the cost. What happened that day would forever challenge the romantic narrative of February 14th. As couples shared quiet moments and exchanged tokens of affection, the horrific reality of a crime went unnoticed by those too caught up in their celebrations. But when it was discovered, it sent shockwaves through the city. A man, driven by a toxic combination of jealousy, rage, and obsession, had committed an unthinkable act. In a city known for its indulgence, its festivities, this crime would stand out as a stark reminder that sometimes, even in the most romantic of settings, evil can strike without warning. As the investigation unfolded, the narrative began to take shape, revealing a crime that was not only brutal but calculated. The crime scene told its own story, speaking of a twisted love gone wrong. The victim, a woman in the prime of her life, had been brutally attacked by someone who had once professed love for her. What started as a seemingly innocent relationship had morphed into something far darker, something that no one could have predicted, a love that had been twisted into something unrecognizable, a crime that shocked even the most hardened investigators. And so, the city was forced to confront the brutal reality that love, in its most dangerous form, could be every bit as deadly as hate. What was meant to be a day of sweetness, of affection, became a reminder of the peril that lurks in the shadows of the human heart. New Orleans, a city with a history of tragedy and triumph, now had another story to add to its complex tapestry. A story of how a day meant for love could also be the backdrop for one of the most horrifying crimes the city had ever seen. The congregation of St. Mark's Baptist Church had always been a tight-knit community, bound together by faith, tradition, and the guiding hand of Reverend James Holloway. His words on Sunday mornings carried the weight of wisdom, his presence a beacon of righteousness. To those who filled the pews week after week, he was more than a pastor. He was a shepherd, a confidant, a man of unwavering moral strength. But beneath the surface of reverence and devotion, a murmur had begun to spread, soft at first, like wind rustling through the leaves. It started in hushed voices exchanged in the fellowship hall, in the lingering glances of church mothers whose wisdom was sharpened by years of witnessing the ways of the world. The whispers carried names: James Holloway, Alicia Carter, Alicia was everything the church loved to see in its youth. Vibrant, passionate, and blessed with a voice that could bring the hardest of hearts to tears. She had been singing in the choir since she was a teenager. She was a presence, one that made people stop and listen. And lately, it seemed she had caught the attention of one person in particular. At first, it was nothing. A warm smile from the pulpit, an encouraging word after service, a conversation held just a moment too long. But over time, those simple exchanges became something more. It was the way Reverend Holloway's eyes lingered when she sang, the way he seemed to position himself near her during gatherings, the way she, too, looked back at him. The members of St. Mark's were not blind. They had seen enough in their lifetimes to recognize the signs, the stolen glances, the subtle shifts in body language. The way Alicia's laughter seemed a bit softer in his presence, the way his hand would briefly touch her shoulder, just for a second longer than necessary. The whispers grew stronger. It was in the way First Lady Holloway's smile had begun to falter, her once proud posture carrying a weight only she could feel, in the way deacons glanced at each other during Sunday meetings, their silence filled with unspoken questions, in the way women of the church leaned in close during Bible study, their voices barely above a whisper as they asked a question none dared to say too loudly. Have you noticed? Something was happening, and though no one had the proof to name it, the air inside St. Mark's had shifted, and in the shadows of their perfect church, something forbidden was taking root. Valentine's Day. The streets shimmered under the glow of restaurant lights, casting long, golden reflections on the wet pavement. Couples walked hand in hand, laughter spilling into the cold February air. Inside Holloway's apartment, a table was set, candles burning low, wine breathing, a meal planned down to the last decadent detail. The anticipation gnawed at him, a slow, twisting hunger in his stomach. Tonight had to be perfect. He had planned everything, the words he would say, the way she would smile, the way she would melt into his arms. But Alicia was late, and then she never came at all. His calls went unanswered, his texts left on read. A hollow sort of silence settled in his chest, his heartbeat too loud, his thoughts too fast. The night was supposed to belong to them. So why wasn't she here? Where was she? And then confirmation, a cruel, gutting revelation. Alicia wasn't stuck at work. She wasn't sick. She was with someone else. A stranger's Instagram story, just a few seconds long, was all it took to unravel him. There she was, his Alicia, smiling at another table, leaning into someone else's touch. A restaurant they had planned to visit together. A night that should have been theirs. Something inside Holloway cracked. The apartment was too quiet, suffocating. He grabbed his coat. The streets blurred past him as he walked, faster, his fists clenched in his pockets. The restaurant came into view, warm, inviting, oblivious to the storm brewing just outside its doors. And there she was, sitting in a booth near the window, laughing, carefree, like tonight meant nothing, like he was nothing. Holloway stepped inside, the scent of seared steak and expensive perfume choking him. He moved through the crowd unnoticed, his heart a slow, steady drum. Alicia didn't see him at first, too busy tracing patterns on the back of her date's hand. Then her eyes met his. The laughter died in her throat, a flicker of panic, a flash of guilt. But before she could speak, before she could explain, if there was anything to explain, Holloway turned and walked out. Alicia followed. The alley behind the restaurant was dark, damp with the remnants of rain. The muffled sounds of the city carried in the distance. But here, it was just the two of them. Jesus, Holloway, what the hell are you doing here? Alicia's voice was tight, defensive. I should be asking you the same thing. She crossed her arms. I don't owe you anything. That hurt more than it should have. Were you ever going to tell me? His voice was calm, too calm. Alicia sighed, looking away. I didn't want to do this tonight. Then when she hesitated, that was all the answer he needed. The argument escalated quickly. Words sharpened into weapons. Accusations cut deep. Alicia pushed past him, but Holloway grabbed her wrist. Too hard, too desperate. She pulled away, but he didn't let go. Then came the struggle, the frantic attempt to leave, the shove, the knife. It wasn't planned. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. One moment, he was pleading with her. The next, she was gasping, her hands clutching at the growing stain on her dress. The streetlight caught the slick, crimson sheen as it spread, too fast, too much. She stumbled back against the wall, her breath coming in short, wet gasps. Holloway stared down at his shaking hands, at the blade still clutched between his fingers. His pulse roared in his ears. This wasn't love. This wasn't what he wanted. Panic took over. The body, the evidence. He needed time. He needed to think. The restaurant's dumpsters. A fire escape. A back entrance no one paid attention to. Holloway moved quickly, his mind a blur, dragging Alicia's limp form deeper into the shadows. His hands were stained, his breath ragged. He could still fix this. The lighter in his pocket flicked open. A spark, a flame. Smoke curled into the night as Holloway set the fire, erasing the scene, the evidence, the memory of what he had done. The flame swallowed everything, the blood, the guilt, the truth. But some things never burn away. The discovery of the crime scene was nothing short of haunting. The air was thick with the acrid stench of smoke, a clinging, suffocating reminder of the fire that had ravaged the room. Charred walls stood like silent witnesses, their blackened surfaces peeling, revealing the raw, blistered wood beneath. A scorched curtain swayed slightly in the open window, the fabric barely holding together after the inferno had licked at its edges. But the fire, though fierce, had not erased everything. No! It had only told part of the story. The rest lay in the cruel details the flames had failed to consume. Alicia's body had been found near the center of the room, collapsed in a desperate, frozen moment of struggle. The coroner would later confirm the cause of death. Blunt force trauma, the kind inflicted with precision, with intent. Blood spatters stretched across the cracked tiles, a cruel constellation of crimson that spoke of violence, of pain, of a fight that Alicia had tried and failed to win. Nearby, the mirror that had once hung on the wall lay in shattered fragments, reflecting jagged pieces of the horror. Among those shards, one piece stood out, stained, smeared with blood, a chilling reminder that Alicia had fought until her very last breath. Her hands bore the proof. Defensive wounds, deep and cruel, marked her fingers and wrists, evidence of a desperate attempt to shield herself from the relentless blows. She had fought. She had tried. But in the end, it had not been enough. And then there was her phone. Though the fire had warped its edges, melting the casing and blackening the screen, the device itself had survived. Investigators pried it open with gloved hands, hopeful, searching. And what they found was more than they had ever expected. Text messages, urgent, frantic. A final exchange, incomplete, cut short. And then a name that blew the case wide open. A name that turned this from a simple act of brutality into something far more twisted, something far more personal. The investigation was only beginning, but already, the truth was clawing its way to the surface, waiting to be uncovered. Holloway's escape was frantic, a desperate scramble fueled by the suffocating weight of inevitability. He stuffed a duffel bag with clothes, no time for neat folds or second guesses. Just grab and go. A burner phone, still in its plastic packaging, clattered into the bag alongside stacks of rubber-banded cash. He had planned for this moment, or at least convinced himself he had. But planning and execution were two very different beasts. His hands trembled as he zipped the bag shut. The car engine growled to life in the silent night. He was already sweating, even as the cold air from the dashboard vents blasted his face. He pulled out of the driveway without a glance back, the streetlights casting fleeting streaks of gold across his windshield. He told himself to keep it together. Stay calm. No sudden moves. but his pulse hammered against his throat, a constant, deafening reminder that he was running out of time. A gas station loomed ahead, its flickering neon sign humming against the stillness of the road. He needed to stop, needed to fuel up if he had any chance of making it out of state. He pulled in, his tires crunching over loose gravel, and killed the engine. The lot was mostly empty, just a bored attendant behind the counter and a single pickup truck parked near the entrance. Holloway exhaled slowly, trying to steady his nerves. He stepped out, forcing himself to walk with purpose but not urgency. Just another traveler on the road, stopping for gas, nothing more. But the moment he approached the pump, something felt off. The air felt heavier, thicker. He glanced at the station's glass doors. The cashier wasn't looking at him anymore. His gaze was fixed on something beyond the lot, something Holloway couldn't see. A shadow moved near the truck. Then another. The realization hit him like ice water down his spine. They were here. He froze, hand hovering over the gas pump. His mind screamed at him to run. But where? His car was boxed in now. Unmarked vehicles had crept into the lot, closing off any escape route. A figure stepped into the harsh glow of the overhead lights, badge catching the reflection. Ethan Holloway. The voice was firm, unwavering. "Put your hands where we can see them." Silence stretched. For a moment, Holloway considered his options. Could he make it to the car? Could he bolt on foot? His heart pounded so hard he thought it might shatter his ribs. Then red and blue lights exploded across the station, a cacophony of sirens splitting open the night. It was over. Slowly, Holloway raised his hands, his fingers trembling. The bag at his feet held everything he thought he needed to escape. But no amount of burner phones or stolen cash could outrun this moment. As the officers moved in, he closed his eyes, inhaling deeply. The pavement was rough against his knees when they forced him down. The cuffs were cold, unyielding. And just like that, the chase was over. The courtroom was packed. Journalists lined the gallery, their pens poised, their cameras capturing every shift in expression. This was no ordinary trial. It was a spectacle, a case that had gripped the public in a vice of horror and fascination. Alicia's family sat in the front row, their grief carved into their faces. Their testimonies were raw, unfiltered. A mother who had lost her daughter, a father whose voice trembled with restrained rage. Their words painted a picture of loss too immense to comprehend. Alicia had been more than a victim. She had been a daughter, a sister, a friend. The weight of her absence was suffocating. The prosecution laid out its case with precision, dissecting every aspect of Holloway's crime. Was it premeditated, a calculated act of evil, or was it a crime of passion, an uncontrollable burst of violence? The evidence was damning, but the intent, that was the true battleground. Then came the psychological analysis. Experts unraveled Holloway's past, his mind, his patterns. He was meticulous, intelligent, but was he insane, a sociopath, or something else entirely? The jury listened as psychiatrists detailed his disturbing tendencies, the red flags that had gone unnoticed for too long. And then, the moment that changed everything, a witness took the stand, one who had never spoken before. Their testimony sent a ripple through the courtroom. Chilling new details emerged, pieces of the puzzle that no one had anticipated. The room fell into a suffocating silence as the weight of their words settled. The trial was no longer just about justice. It was about understanding the mind of a killer, about the terrifying possibility that evil could be hiding in plain sight. How much of Holloway's story is truth, and how much is shaped by the lens of those who survived him? Eyewitnesses paint a man unraveling, but was he always on this path, or did someone, push him over the edge? Cryptic voicemails, unreturned messages. Were these desperate attempts to warn, to confess, or to control? And why were certain records missing, conveniently erased before they could be scrutinized? Alicia's silence. If she knew more than she let on, why didn't she speak? Fear? Loyalty? Or something deeper, something darker? Theories range from coerced silence to active complicity, but without her voice, the truth remains elusive, the evidence that doesn't fit. Discrepancies in timelines, missing security footage, a key piece of physical evidence that surfaced too late. Coincidence or calculated omission, and if so, by whom? The final act. When the dust settled, when the investigators closed their files, did justice prevail? Or was the real story buried, left to fester in the cracks of conflicting accounts and unanswered questions? New Orleans has always been a city shrouded in mystery, a place where history and folklore intertwine. But this crime, this singular act of violence, has left a scar that refuses to fade. Even today, whispers of its impact can be heard in hushed conversations over dimly lit bar tops, in the stories passed down through generations. The streets where it happened still bear the weight of the past, as though they, too, remember. For those who lived through it, the fear never fully dissipated. Some residents changed their routines, locking their doors tighter, looking over their shoulders more often. For others, it became an obsession, an unsolved puzzle that gnawed at their minds, drawing them deeper into the labyrinth of unanswered questions. But for the families of those involved, it was something else entirely, a wound that never healed, a name that could never be spoken without pain, a memory forever frozen in time. And yet, despite the investigations, the theories, the countless hours spent dissecting every possible clue, we are left with more questions than answers. What really happened that night? Who was truly responsible? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, why? Was it a crime of passion? A calculated act? Or something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? Some believe the official story, the version laid out in police reports and court records. Others argue that the truth was buried long ago, concealed by power, corruption, or even fear. There are gaps in the timeline, inconsistencies in the statements, pieces that don't quite fit. And in those spaces, the debate rages on. Historians, amateur sleuths, and true crime enthusiasts continue to pore over the details, searching for that one missing link, that one overlooked clue that could rewrite everything we think we know. But will we ever truly know the full story? Or is this one of those cases that will forever remain an enigma, an unsettling echo in the history of New Orleans, waiting for the right set of eyes to finally piece it all together? And now, I turn to you. What do you think really happened? Have we been looking at this case all wrong? Do you believe the official narrative, or do you see the holes, the inconsistencies, the signs that something darker is lurking beneath the surface? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Share your theories, your suspicions, your insights. Maybe together, we can uncover something that's been hidden in plain sight all along. And if you know someone who might have their own take on this case, someone who loves a good mystery, someone with a keen eye for the details, send this video their way. Let's keep the conversation going, because sometimes the truth isn't found in the headlines or the case files. Sometimes it's uncovered in the spaces between. If this case fascinated you, if you love unraveling the mysteries that history refuses to solve, then you won't want to miss what's coming next. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload, because the world of true crime is vast and there are so many more stories waiting to be told. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.